What's up, Guerrilla Social Workers? This is the Guerrilla Social Work Podcast, your crackerjack clinical insurgents pitting evidence against anecdotes, with your hosts, Jeff, Rusty Springs Moore, and yours faithfully, Mace Warren. Jeff and I are both forensic psychotherapists that specialize in the clinical treatment of those involved in the criminal justice system. We love sharing our misguided musings with all of you, and we thank you so much for your ongoing listenership. Today we sit down to discuss the clinical skill of emergency planning. This skill is intended to support efforts for relapse prevention by teaching clients strategies to interrupt a crisis situation that could lead to a potential high-risk situations. The purpose of this clinical skill is to prepare and equip clients that may find themselves in risky situations while in treatment with a select set of skills to manage those situations so they can achieve their goals. Excellent podcast for both therapists and clients. If you like what you hear, put the 5-star ratings address on Craigslist advertising that their house is going to be demolished and everything the reader can remove is free. And now, on with the show. You hearing that, sucker?
Yep.
Hey, oh, let's go. Dude, like, what's that? What is that? What is the chorus to that song?
Yeah, I can hear the tune, but not
Blitzkrieg Bop. Oh, it's Blitzkrieg Bop. Yeah. Dude, is there any, like, you know when there's like a word that sounds like exactly what it is? Yeah. Like you could speak any,
or whatever it is.
Right. You could speak any language and hear the word Blitzkrieg and you'd know what it was.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. It's a cool word.
Yeah. That song.
Blitzkrieg.
Dude, I don't know though, that song. I never really got into punk stuff. I could never understand it. Did you? You ever dig that?
Not really. I feel like I felt like I should like punk, but I never landed with it.
Would you get the mic close to your face?
Ooh,
yeah, right there. That's people want to hear that voice, dude.
Yeah, my silky smooth voice.
No, they dig it. Everybody says that you like everybody who meets you. I was going to ask you about this because how many challenge coins do you have?
5.
5. I've got 1. It was my first one because are you doing that run?
No.
Oh my God. So you got 1 for not even doing anything. And and I got 1 and I'm running, I think I'm running 18 miles total for them on that race with them.
Yeah. I gave the appearance that I'm doing something worthwhile.
I think, dude, so I don't want to, like, you for sure have a more, people always describe you as down to earth and comforting and stuff like that. Versus I don't know if I like around me, because I think in terms of our body of work, we've done a lot of equivalent stuff for corrections, right? And I've gotten 1, and it was only issued to me 2 weeks ago. So,
well, I've only earned 1.
Well, how they give them to you, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then,
but I did something cool to get 1. The other ones I traded in.
What'd you do cool? Wait, you traded in stuff?
So check this out. I got the first one I ever got was from Nuke, and I got that. That's the one I earned, and I used the one I earned because Captain Smith thought it was cool. He didn't have a Nuke one, so he says, "Give me the Nuke one, and I'll give you a Promontory and Lone Peak. Maybe is the one I have." And I mean, he said something nice, of course, like, I love working with you guys. I wish that could continue, but it is what it is. And so I got the 2 from him. And then, I heard the other one too. Then the Utah Women of Law Enforcement, when I did that podcast with Nita.
Yeah, when you did that. Oh, okay.
And they gave me 2 for that.
You got 2 challenge points for that?
Yep. So, but the only one I earned, I used a bolt cutter to cut through a chain that they were trying to see if the chain would be adequate to prevent break-ins into like squad cars and stuff. And no one else at Nuke had the strength to be able to use a bolt cutter to break it. But McCain handed me the bolt cutter and I snapped right through it. He's like, "Thank you. We need a thicker chain. Here's a challenge coin."
There's a thing going on at Weber County Jail right now. I don't know if you saw. There's it's like it's on the whiteboard, like right when you walk in, and it said in June that there's a challenge with the sheriff if you can out bench press him.
What, really?
That you'll get money. And I was like, I'm not even like, because I mean,
is Arbin jacked?
I've heard rumors he's super strong.
Huh.
So, but I mean, like, I don't know. What I don't want to have happen, and this sounds super, I don't know, pretentious and conceited, but I don't want to go in there and like show off. That'd just be dumb. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I mean, so, cause I mean, I could push a lot of weight, right?
And
so,
are you sure you want to show up the big man?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But if I could get a challenge coin out of it,
Yeah.
I might just beat it by like 2.5 pounds and just barely scrape it out.
Yeah, really make it look like you're struggling. Yeah.
Or not. I've already decided I wasn't going to do that. The people were hitting me up about it. Officers were. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. But yeah,
it does look a little like, look at me.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. I'm not interested in it at all. So, but yeah. Well, anyway, I got to figure out how to get more challenge coins. Those things are cool. I like how heavy they are. They remind me of like
They're serious.
a gnarly pog.
Dude, like a slammer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could use them as a slammer.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of a blitzkrieg, if
And
you're
a-
in a blitzkrieg, you'd want to put together an emergency strategy, right?
Great segue.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So we came up with this idea of when we're doing clinical skills to kind of do just a quick kind of, you know, run through of the clinical skill. Normally when we're doing these, for listeners who are, you know, paying attention to like on the clinical side of these, you know, we do these in a group type setting, and or we're doing this in an individual setting. And what happens is, you know, a group setting, we have a stepwise process where they'll come in and we have one group to the next. And with, I don't know, however many group members, usually like 10 or 12, there's plenty of content to apply to the strategy, right? So if you teach the clinical skill quickly, usually you can be done in 15 or 20 minutes, you know what I mean? Without like feedback.
Yeah, right.
And with an individual client, you know, you would, so obviously, well, before I get into that, group clients, you'd obviously want to facilitate this and asking them how to apply these things. How does this apply to you?
Mm-hmm.
What are some situations you can see this being useful? Obviously, the objective there is to motivate them as to why the skill is important, and then link that with something that has value in their life, and then teach them how to do the skill, rehearse the skill, and then have them develop some sort of practical application commitment between now and next session.
That's
right?
pretty good, man.
Yeah. And same thing goes with individuals. You just got to work a little bit harder, you know, because individuals should be a little bit more dynamic. I'd say if you're, you know, try to adjust to the client need as they're coming in. So I wouldn't always say do an emergency strategy, although
You wouldn't say I was doing emergency strategy.
well, I mean, you know, so on emergency strategies, like on here's the reason why is because this might not be useful. Well, I guess it could be useful for anybody who's making high risk decisions and high risk behaviors, right? So emergency strategies are essentially, they're a relapse prevention technique.
Yeah.
Okay. And relapse prevention, I know that has a lot of real estate in substance use world, right? But you know the origins of that word, right? Or that term, relapse prevention.
I don't think I do.
So it's just a medical term. It's just returning to a state in which you were,
like
you'd
with diabetes or something.
Yeah, like you'd previously made progress from.
Okay.
So, and
medical model stuff that we've adopted.
right, and it's, I think it's appropriate to use it that way. But most people think of relapses as like a failure or a setback or something like that. And the way I describe it is like this. So pretend you had asthma, right? And you go into your doctor and you say, Doc, I've got asthma, right? And he said, I felt like I was dying the other day. And he's like, okay, well, we're going to give you a once a day corticosteroid. You take this, and then we're going to give you an inhaler that is for emergency use. If you start having an asthma attack again, we want you to use this inhaler. You say, okay, Doc, got it. Thanks. So then, I don't know, 3 days later or something like that, you're running, you have an asthma attack, right? And you pull out your trusty inhaler and you use it as directed, but you still doesn't do anything. Doesn't have the effect, the desired effect, right? And you got to go to the emergency room and, you know, you're buggered all up or whatever. Okay, you go back to your doc. What are you naturally going to ask for?
A stronger dose or
Right.
a better version, something different.
Stronger dose or a change in medication, right? So I think a good way to look at this is relapse can apply to anything. If I'm trying to avoid a certain type of behavior that I've deemed to be high risk, and high risk is just anything that is bringing you back to a state in which you're trying to avoid, right?
Yeah, this doesn't have to be related to like sexual offending or drug abuse.
Right. Substance use is easy. Sex offending's easy. But I think if you're thinking of like depressive states or anger, any of those things, you can say that's what I'm going back to. And a relapse, all that is an indication of is you need to adjust your treatment. That's it. You need to adjust your treatment plan. So that would be a conversation you have with your therapist. So the reason I say I don't always do it is because I don't know if it's necessary. I don't know if you'll always need an emergency strategy. I think when substance use is there, I think because of the prevalence of relapse and substance use, of course, do it. Same thing in sex offending. But I don't know, depressive stuff, you might be okay. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. As we'll be getting into, these are essentially like coping strategies, emotional regulation techniques. But what would you say the difference is between a standard coping skill and an emergency strategy as far as like utility or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, a standard coping skill is not one that risk is imminent, right? Risk for the behavior is imminent. And if you don't intervene quickly, that something's going to happen. So an emergency is exactly what it sounds like. It's you wouldn't want to use these on a routine basis, and also, you have to kind of use it early on when you're seeing these come in, and there's a couple components to this that are really kind of important. And the analogy that we've been taught has been stop, drop, and roll. I'll talk about why I think there's a better one. I think about this like fire drills. Okay. Like, so I don't know, when we were in school, and there's been fire drills at other places too. I think we did a fire drill at the prison a couple times too.
Yeah, we've done them in staff meeting actually too.
So if they do those, I mean, if you do a fire drill, I mean, are you planning on there being a fire? Is that what your plan is?
No, I wouldn't look at it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
You are recognizing the potential for there being a fire, and you want to have a modicum of preparedness for when that comes around. Right. That's all you want.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I view these. The stop, drop, and roll. Here's the deal. Here's why I don't like that analogy, is because I like that, by the way. You guys can test this. Any clinician listening to this, if you introduce this skill, this has never failed. It doesn't matter how old, it doesn't matter what country of origin, doesn't matter what diversity, where they're from, anything. I tell people, hey, there's 3 things. I start a group and I say, there's 3 things that we have been taught to do when you catch on fire. And what are those? And inevitably everybody says stop, drop, and roll. Right. So it's like one of those things all of us know and rarely do. And there's a reason why, because you can look up like endless YouTube videos of idiots catching fire and doing everything except for stop, dropping, and rolling, right?
Yes. I have a friend that I have a story for that. Exactly.
Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think we all know it? We all know it. It's ubiquitous in our society. So why does nobody stop, drop, and roll?
Fear does a really good job of shutting your cognitive part of your brain off, and you lose, fear, anger, those types of things. All the stuff you've rehearsed in your head's out the window. You're in an emergency right now. And
rehearsed doesn't really factor into it, because you think about this, fear and anger and other big time emotional states. When was the last time you had a jiu-jitsu tournament?
It's been like 3 years.
Okay. And how'd that go?
I got second.
Okay. And did you get submitted at any time?
No.
Okay. So it's just points, right?
Yeah.
When was the last time you got submitted?
In a competition?
Anytime.
Oh, last week.
Okay. And how did you get submitted?
I heel hook.
Okay. Now, from the time that you knew you were in trouble to the time that you tapped out, what time frame are we talking about?
Maybe 3 seconds.
Okay. So now, did you see things leading up to that, and were you trying to get out of it?
Yeah.
Okay. And where was your mind when you were seeing things happening and you were trying to get out of it? Were you panicked at that point?
As it became more inevitable that I was getting caught, I wouldn't call it panic, but yeah, my alarm bells went off.
Heel hooks are pretty scary because they can do a lot of damage really quickly.
Yeah. I trusted the dude I was rolling with.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea there is you have a lot of practice in those things, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody put you into a choke, for example, and even if it was kind of a deep choke, I have to imagine that you wouldn't freak out immediately, right? Because you have training in that, right? And that's probably the worst thing that you can do. Even though being choked would, to the layperson, provoke a lot of panic and worry and distress.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So because you've had practice, and this is like, so UFC fighters or I don't know, like Navy SEALs, anybody who has training, the practice application prevents, even though the emotional state is still there, we're able to activate both parts of our brain and still think clearly in those situations. You're still afraid. You should be. I mean, but you're able to still think clearly.
Right.
That's whereas stop, drop, and roll. Dude, when was the last time you're sitting at home and you're like, all right, I'm going to practice my stop, drop, and roll?
Not once.
Never, ever, since I learned it from some creepy fireman when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, not once.
Never. So that's the problem with stop, drop, and roll. It's not a useful way of thinking about that. So that's another reason why I emphasize to clients, hey, these strategies, they need to be practiced, okay, as goofy as they might seem. And also don't practice them like when the stakes are high, practice them. You've heard of the term like strike while the iron is cold.
Absolutely.
It's a useful way of looking at this and saying, look, just practice this when everything's calm, cool,
get the reps
collected.
In.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then the next time it comes around, you're gonna be using these. So
absolutely.
Should we take a look at the skill
That's
here?
A good meta. I like it.
Yeah. So let's take a look at this. So emergency strategies. Look at that PowerPoint. Wow.
So pretty.
Fancy.
You got some props, by the way, on your PowerPoint from the task force training.
Oh yeah? Yeah. Who said something?
Rockwood said something. He was like, he was like asking me like how. Like he goes, how'd you do that, Jeff? I was like,
I'll never give him my secrets, my PowerPoint secrets.
Yeah. And then a couple of our staff.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, yeah. So basically, these are just strategies, like we said, to deal with situations that present immediate risk of engaging in high risk behaviors. Okay, so this would not be something that you have time to plan. You have time to talk to your therapist about. This would be, I'm cleaning out like a substance use example might be something like, I'm cleaning out my house. I'm doing spring cleaning. And unbeknownst to me, I turn over a rug or something that's been there for a minute that I'm going to throw out, and out comes a meth pipe. Oh, okay.
That happens to people.
Huge trigger. When I was actively using, I probably didn't notice. Not me. I'm talking about clients, but I probably didn't remember that it was there. And it just came out. Okay, now I'm triggered. That'd be a useful time to use an emergency strategy, right? Or I was thinking about those silly scenarios that are talked about in one of those old like juvenile sex offender manuals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Somebody comes over and tries to drop their kid off because they have to take their other kid to the hospital. What do you do? I'm like, why don't they just take their other kid to the hospital?
No. Yeah.
Shut the door.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, even if that happened to me, I wouldn't take that.
You had to give some liberty to the authors of those books because they were a little silly.
So like we said, rehearsal is crucial in this. We want these strategies to be second nature, and we kind of talked about the reasons why people don't remember those. Okay. So one thing, I think you have two categories. Okay. You're going to have, if you have a history of engaging in those high risk behaviors, whether it's substance use, sexual, proclivity, whatever they are, you're going to have urges. And I think substance use has another category that we have to take into account, which is cravings. Cravings are a little bit more intense, I would say, because they have not just psychological, but, there's physical, all kinds of things going. So one thing we try to say in this is urges and cravings are normal. Everyone experiences them. So like, I don't know, it's probably important that clients know that this isn't the urge to do this is not a setback in and of itself.
I've had to explain that to clients. Sometimes I'll ask them if they had an urge to use or something, and I can tell that they feel like if they say yes, that I'm going to look at them negatively. Like, oh, you had an urge, you had a craving. Like, oh man, you're slipping.
Right.
And so I have to kind of undo some of that.
Well, and so many therapists do that too. Like there was a therapist not too long ago. I kind of had to talk off the ledge because they were saying that a client might need inpatient treatment because they were talking about past marijuana use. And I was like,
right.
Well, you probably should be talking about past marijuana use. Talking about it in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, even if there's some glorification. Yeah, there's some cognitive distortions in there that you need to work on, but just that's a good indicator of where they are. So just roll with it, everybody. And clients, if you're listening to this, just say, okay, the end, it's there, right? They're to be expected, especially when you're first making change. Change takes time. And the cool thing about it is they're time limited. So they'll pass. The reason why this is, and you taught me this a long time ago. It's like economics 101 about subsidizing something. What's the rule about subsidizing?
If you subsidize something, you get more of it.
Right. So if we subsidize or, in this case, reinforce the craving or the urge by acting on it. So in a relapse in terms of like using, or if I'm trying to avoid pornography, I look at, I don't know, some not porn on YouTube or something, or an Instagram model or whatever the hell it is. I am now, reinforcing that. And then now it's going to be stronger the next time. It's going to be more difficult and it's going to take more time to pass.
Right.
So if I just chill, it will go away for sure.
Find some way to use this strategy like we're going to get into to allow that time to pass.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the cool thing about this, and this is something I think everybody should dig, is that if you are experiencing them, that is an indication that you are making changes. Like, it would be weird. I would say for sure you do not have a problem if you didn't have any urges or cravings to go back to the behavior you're trying to avoid in the first place. So the fact that they're happening, do we want the frequency and the intensity and the duration to go down? I think so. That's a good metric, but going away completely, I don't know if they ever go away completely.
Right. Exactly. And by the way, do you give any credence to the whole, like a craving lasts 9 minutes or something? You hear these like funny numbers and things, or you know what I mean?
The habit takes 30 days to
that
change.
Type of stuff. Yeah.
I think it's variable to everybody. I think that, I would worry not so much about the time as the intensity, right? I would say that to me is and all of them are good. You can, because that's where an emergency strategy comes in. This is not intended to, because if I have I always give a scale from 0 to 100, right? Yep. 0 is no craving whatsoever. 100 is it's the biggest craving I could ever even imagine. I've never even had that big of a craving. And I ask, okay, that's just a concept. There's not really a gauge in your head.
It's arbitrary.
What number am I going to relapse? Is it 85? Okay,
so let's say I say 85. Okay.
It's 85, right?
Yeah, once I say 85, I'm going to use.
Okay, so then an emergency strategy takes you from 85 to an 80. It does not get you out of the woods. It buys you enough time to use another intervention.
That's critical to talk about with clients, because they'll give up on these things when it doesn't completely eliminate the craving to begin with.
Right.
You have to put it in context, like you're saying.
So whether that's I get a support person, or I call a crisis line, or whatever that is, it just gets me through the next 5 minutes. That's how it's designed. It gives you enough time to think clearly enough that I can use another intervention, because interventions should build on one another. Okay. And that's, enough time to maybe create physical and mental distance away from whatever the trigger is. That could be a ton. But so this is why I don't think duration is that important, because what if my craving's at a 15?
Yeah.
If my threshold is 85 I can hold 15 all day.
Right.
You know what I mean? Doesn't matter how long the craving is. So,
right. Or is it like 90 seconds, but it's like a 92.
Right. Intensity to me seems way more important. And that's where emergency strategies are a little bit more effective, I'd say. And that's where, the other ones, should you be at a 15 all the time? Seems that'd be, I don't know.
Be a little annoying.
Kind of stressful. And we can work on getting that down. It's probably just poor choices in what you're doing in daily living. But
that's how
I don't know if you need to, do anything like an emergency strategy at that point. So first one we talk about is distraction. So these are this is like a generic list. The one thing I always just say about distractions is this has to be, so distractions is an easy one. Just distract yourself away from this. Now the key to this, we've given physical activity, talking to someone, listening to music, non-triggering music. If you were listening to Jaquan Tipsy. Like, shout out to the 90s.
Yeah.
or was that early 2000s?
Yeah.
If you had a lot of fun times with that, stay away from that one. Watching TV or a movie, reading, playing games, doing a puzzle, video games are also included in that. Look, I don't care what it is. What the main point about this is that it legitimately grabs your attention.
Right.
This has to be something that not only do you look forward to doing, you should probably practice depriving yourself from using this and only using it when, I had a client talk to me about this not too long ago, and I was asking him about this, and I was like, well, so what's a game you really like to play? And he's Fortnite. I was like, okay, Fortnite. All right. So I know this sounds really hard, especially for a dude getting out of prison, but what, that should be your go-to, is depriving yourself deliberately from playing Fortnite unless you're in an emergency and then allowing yourself to play it,
What's the reason?
Because that is something that it really grabs his attention. He really loves playing that game. And if he were to pull it up, it would grab his attention and he'd get his mind off of whatever that was because he'd be focused on playing the game.
And if he had just played Fortnite day in, day out, it wouldn't have the same effect at turning the volume down on the craving.
No, it'd be similar to this is my daily routine.
Right.
So
it's not a good distraction.
Right.
You have to have it mean something.
So yeah, just coming up with a generic, I guess I could read a book, I'm like, well, it says here in your assessment, you can't even read, but I mean, you know what I mean? I don't mean to make light of it. I'm saying you need to do something that's going to legitimately grab your attention.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is, because anything at that point is pretty safe compared to you can have arguments of whether or not video games are productive. I don't care about productivity. I'm talking about you need to distract yourself temporarily.
Bro, I got this one from our old boss, Brian. He'd always say if you talk about the value of exercise, but not the typical endorphins, this and that. He would say 30 seconds, balls to the wall, maximal exertion, and you're going to be in a fundamentally different mood than you were 30 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Just blast burpees for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
If you're outside, this one's not as easy to do, but you look like a crazy person, but I've done this a couple times. I'll step outside my house and just book it down the block, just full tilt sprint.
Yeah.
And I'm sucking wind and I'm no longer stressed.
Right. It's kind of hard to keep your mind on anything. Right. So again, it needs to legitimately grab your attention. I don't think you have to like it. That's also another thing too. If you like it and you dig it, the thing is you should prevent yourself from doing it because then you're more likely to continue doing it. But all I want is you to distract yourself, get yourself into a different mind state. Okay. Real simple. And when you do this with clients, you want to practice this. You want to say, okay, well, what is this? And then I would just want to talk to them. Okay, well, how would you do that? So if you're at work and you experience this, right? This is where Fortnite starts to fall apart. Okay, we got to come up with another one. So you got to, they don't play Fortnite in front of you in your session. I'm saying let's rehearse this in terms of talking it through. How are we going to plan on these
skill
things?
steps?
Right. If I'm going to use this. So another one is real simple, just deep breathing. Okay. This is one that I think probably you can combine with anything. And we just say, and I know this sounds trivial.
Basic.
But it's really important for activating the part of your brain that we want taking over at this moment. So in times of panic, like we said before, when you're on fire, the problem is the part of your brain you want to work doesn't. It shuts off. You go into survival mode. Your limbic system starts firing on all cylinders, and you go into survival mode, even though you might not be in actual mortal danger, right?
Yeah.
And then you act like an idiot, and you don't think very clearly. Whereas you have been in, if homeboy wanted to choke you and continue to choke you, you could die.
Yeah, it'd be a problem.
Right?
Yeah.
But you don't panic. There's multiple things going on through your head. I have a good rolling partner. I have to think my way out of this. Been
in the situation 500 times before.
I know know the move to counter this. Yeah. Your mind's working, really well. I saw you one time when you were going against who's that old UFC fighter? That was it. DeMarcus. Yeah. And you were in a tournament with him. This is kind of early on, and I saw he had you in trouble, and then you kind of reset and recalibrate and looked down, and then everything was fine. I was like, oh, okay. Anybody in another situation would be panicking, freaking out at that point. So
remember that? Huh?
Oh yeah. It was just cool to watch because deep breathing helps with that. I'm deliberately taking steps to activate my prefrontal cortex, which is doing the thinking. So close your damn mouth. Don't say anything, And at times, with clients, you can kind of encourage them to do this. But deep breathing is, I'm going to close my mouth. I'm going to breathe through my nose and out through my mouth. And I'm going to repeat. Real simple. Okay.
I feel like I need to explain to clients kind of what you just did to me to sell this, because clients often do. I think they think it's trivial or just sort of like, really, that's the advice you're going to give me? Oh, wise one. I have to kind of explain the whole limbic system and use examples of it. Because this one is probably one of the most effective for kind of getting the sympathetic to switch back over to parasympathetic. It's like the lever that we have to kind of switch that area of our nervous system. Mm-hmm. And it's so basic, it seems obvious, but this one takes a sales pitch in my experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. The other one is, this is progressive muscle relaxation. What I like about this is this normally, now this has two different tracks. So the first one is when you're doing this and you do your entire body. Okay. Now, if you're doing your entire body, that's tricky. And that takes some time because essentially you're contracting and relaxing every single muscle that you possibly can in your body. And there's a few good videos on YouTube that you can watch that walk you through it from head to toe. Really, it's designed to kind of coach your mind and your body to noticing what's the difference between a tense and relaxed state.
Yes.
So particularly, like if you don't do a whole lot of exercise, practicing this on a regular basis is very helpful. The emergency strategy only focuses down to your shoulders, and it requires basically 40 seconds.
Huh.
Okay. So find a quiet spot, and you can do this without looking like a freak. Okay. You find a quiet spot, tighten the muscles in your face and head, hold for 10 seconds, then release. Tighten the muscles in your jaw, hold for 10 seconds, then release. Tighten the muscles in your neck, hold for 10 seconds and release. Tighten the muscles in your shoulders, hold for 10 seconds, then release.
I don't know if I've just bypassed it or missed it, but I haven't seen or heard anybody talk about the emergency strategy version of this. I always kind of thought progressive muscle relaxation was out of place in the emergency strategies.
They updated it.
Nice.
Yeah. So This is much more fitting because I have 40 seconds.
Now that makes sense.
Yeah. And so I can do this standing. I can go find if I'm on, I don't know, doing factory work or something like that, and somebody said something to me and I want to punch them, I can go take a break for a minute and just walk through this. And by virtue of doing this, you're naturally going to put yourself in a more relaxed state. Okay. I mean, your body really can't help it if you're doing this correctly. The other one is visualization, pleasant imagery. This one just is real simple. Close your eyes, imagine a peaceful scene. Always reminds me of Happy Gilmore in A Happy Place.
Yeah.
It says, describe the scene to yourself, identify all the scenes you're experiencing there. What do you see, hear, feel, smell, taste? Essentially, this is a grounding exercise. This is also, you can also kind of do this in real time in the environment you're in. It's just a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Mm-hmm. What are 5 things you can, see? What are 4 things you can hear? What are 3 things you can feel? What are 2 things you can smell? What's 1 thing you can taste? Right. Mm-hmm. And just go from there. And really what you're doing is taking yourself out of your head and trying to bring yourself into the here and now. That's really all you're trying to accomplish when you're doing this. So, I mean, it's a real simple one. One thing we do try to tell clients is choose an image that doesn't involve illegal behavior, substance use, or, sexual behaviors.
I mean, the Happy Gilmore's Happy Place had a lingerie-clad woman in it.
Well, which is fine, and beer.
Yeah.
So don't do that. And then, dude, I love it when Shooter comes in there and then just freaking makes out with her. Makes out with his grandma.
Well, one thing I was going to say on this just real quick. If you're a therapist teaching this, so you see the part that says, what do you see, hear, feel, smell, and taste? When I'm running a group, I'll usually, no one wants to close their eyes in a group full of other dudes. So I'll usually have them just stare at their knees while they're sitting down, and I say, I'm going to ask these questions out loud. I don't want anybody to answer. I just want you to consider in your head. And so when I say, what do you see? I'm tempted to start suggesting things that they might consider seeing, but I leave it open-ended. So what do you see? ... What do you hear? I slow it down. I because it's easy to rush through this. And if the client hasn't actually stopped to consider all 5 senses, they're less likely to have it be real, less like it. So you really want to make this as true to life, full color, any kind of sounds that might be there, because left alone on, without going through that, I've noticed it's like a pretty meaningless behavior. You got to really sell it, like as far as getting the clients to, as much as possible, make themselves there. And I have a story, I won't tell it today, but I have a story that I tell about this experience on a beach in Hawaii. And I take them through it first, explain all my sensations, and then I take them through it in more of like a guided way.
Which is a good, that's, so if you're doing good therapy or teaching a strategy, I'd say don't ever ask clients to do something that you're not willing to do, and for sure demonstrate. So when you're doing this, demonstrate this for them, okay? And then get feedback from them on what they noticed about this, and then ask them to pick something that's important to them, and then walk them through this. An individual, you can actually get that feedback from them and ask them what they're seeing, but I think having a backup plan on this, because again, if your boss is yelling at you, for doing the wrong thing or something, and just closing your eyes, be a little weird. But you can do it with your eyes open using the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Again, you're just trying to avoid that. Get yourself through the next 5 minutes.
Nice.
And I think this is the last one. So this is just positive self-talk. Now, one thing about this is not just like giving yourself attaboys, okay? Like, and
you're saying that, bro.
Saying turn that frown upside down, or keep on trucking, or just,
I'm a worthwhile person.
Yeah, or whatever other dumb, what?
I appreciate
some
you saying
of the cliches.
That is so lame.
So I'm just saying, okay, so this says what we try to encourage clients to do is think about statements that remind you that you've been successful in the past. Like,
I've got this.
Yeah. Real simple, easy to remember. I always like the idea that, you've survived your worst days. That's always really important to hear.
Yeah, no shit. Huh?
Well, you're here.
Right.
After all,
right.
You've survived your worst experience, and you're better for it. So, just recognizing that, you should be able to get through the next little bit.
Do you link this in with any of your accomplishments, like finishing an Ironman? I would have to imagine that finishing an Ironman has got to be one of the most fulfilling, like, damn, did I just do that shit type of moments.
Yeah, I think just reminding yourself, like, even when I've heard, trainers that, you're going through some sort of crazy exercise, and, when somebody's like, you can do anything for 20 seconds. Like I've heard, yoga instructors doing hot yoga, and you're holding some crazy pose, and you're like ready to die, and you're like, I'm just going to let go. And they're like, you got 20 seconds. You can do anything for 20 seconds. Just chill. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that for 20 seconds. Like,
that's cool.
Just reminding myself that I can get through it. So I think those are really, and Ironman or any accomplishments, I think is really important. But also that you have survived your worst days. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Is that more impactful to you than like thinking of a positive, like thinking of that you made it past negatives? Yeah,
I like that. And then also I always, it's always nice to remind myself like how fortunate sometimes we are to worry about stuff like this. Like if we were in certain third world countries, I'm like,
first world problems are all right.
Nobody's are worried about these things. So, we're in pretty good shape,
Right.
Also think about statements that remind you that you will be successful in the future. So it's not just like reminding yourself of previous successes, but things that remind you that you're going to be successful in the future. And I'm not,
it's only uphill from here.
Right. Here's what I would say about this is, avoid cliches, but also avoid comparing yourself to somebody who's like super successful. Okay. If you compare yourself to Elon Musk, you're a loser all the time. Okay. If your measure is money, okay, or everything. Okay. You only compare yourself to yourself. That's it. That's the best positive thing that you can do is compare yourself to yourself and how much better you're going to be in the future as a result of that.
Yeah.
And then last thing is, just remind yourself that you will succeed. Real simple stuff there. So
beautiful.
So those are kind of some really positive strategy I think that we can, that clients can use. And so anything else we want to say on this?
No, just keep it right there.
That was pretty short. 40 minutes.
40. That was about what we planned.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, until next time, folks. that about does it for this episode of the podcast. If you like what you hear, put the 5-star ratings address on Craigslist advertising that their house is going to be demolished and everything the reader can remove is free. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please help us grow by giving us a 5-star rating and sharing with a friend. Keep your 1-star ratings to yourself, but those of you planning to leave a 3-star rating, you guys need help. We'd like to stay and chat longer, but we're lying. Good night.